Welcome back, focused learners, to another explainer. Today, we're tackling something pretty fascinating. When concern isn't resistance, the relational harmony signal. You know, we're really going to challenge that classic stubborn corporate assumption that the hard math of business and the soft, squishy vibes of culture just cannot mix. Let's jump right in.
So think about what happens whenever an organization goes through a major transition. You're inevitably going to hear employees express this, well, concern for coworkers. Now, traditional change management almost always slaps a red warning label on this. They see it as an obstacle, just pure friction to be optimized out. But is it really? Or is it actually a critical, highly measurable signal that we've just been totally ignoring?
Well, the hard data here is absolutely fascinating. Take a look at this. We're looking at a plus 0.1179 Pearson positive correlation. And what that does is explicitly link this exact concern for coworkers to the green vMEME and spiral dynamics. Essentially, it's tied to a core worldview, a value system. People who operate with this green mindset are significantly more likely to flag collective concern during a transition.
And hey, this isn't just some wild guess. The rigor behind this data is solid. We're talking 61 different countries, 18 languages, and over 450 specific responses. The student critical value for this dataset was R equals 0.0925. So because our correlation of plus 0.1179 easily clears that threshold, it mathematically proves this is a reliable pattern. It's not a fluke. Now, obviously, as with all data, we got to remember this shows a really strong pattern, not necessarily direct causation, right?
Okay, so what's actually happening here? For a green-dominant individual, expressing concern for their coworkers is literally an act of empathetic attunement. From their point of view, they aren't trying to block progress at all. Actually, scratch that. They're doing the exact opposite. They're deploying a highly protective relational awareness. In their value system, maintaining collective emotional safety is simply way more important than sheer procedural efficiency.
And this pattern becomes crystal clear when we look at other change resistance factors tied to that green vMEME. Everything points to the exact same priority. Like poor communication, that has a massive plus 0.2516 correlation. Why? Because communication is literally the bedrock of relational trust. Even their concern over curtailed freedom is totally rooted in valuing autonomy, but strictly within a collective team context. The green value system just consistently filters organizational change through one fundamental need, and that's maintaining the emotional safety of the group.
Now, you can probably guess how this leads to a massive systemic conflict. Picture a boardroom right in the middle of discussing a huge change initiative. The green team member speaks up and voices concern for their coworkers. But the blue, order-driven system in the room, they see that as just a secondary distraction from procedural duty. And the orange, achievement-driven system, they view it as a total drag on strategic agility and momentum. It's crazy! 3 completely different value systems looking at the exact same signal and coming to completely opposite conclusions.
Which brings us to a pretty critical crossroads. If you can recognize this concern for what it is, a signal of systemic cohesion, you can build actual, authentic buy-in by speaking the green system's language. But, and this is a big but, if your corporate framework blindly treats this empathy as just some soft friction to be optimized away, that green system completely loses its anchor. Your engagement metrics might show some superficial participation, sure, but underneath, the actual trust is entirely eroding.
There's this real-world observation from Valery Kosenko that just hits the nail on the head. He says that gap is where empathetic engagement fractures. It perfectly captures the stakes here. When leadership removes relational harmony as a valid input for decisions, people don't necessarily reject the progress or the new tools themselves. No way. They reject the destruction of their team's emotional safety. When you assume everyone views concern for coworkers as an annoying obstacle, you create this massive prediction gap. And right in that gap is exactly where empathetic engagement fractures.
And this leads to what we call the escalation of quiet drift. It's basically the terrifying butterfly effect of ignoring human metrics. It kicks off when management uses a relational blind framing. From there, empathetic disengagement takes root, but you might not even notice it because it's usually masked by superficial compliance. People just doing the bare minimum. Eventually, this results in silent cohesion drift. It's not some loud, dramatic explosion. It's a quiet, systemic collapse of trust that fundamentally weakens the entire team.
All right, let's look at the tech resolution for all of this. Formalizing the algebra of conscience with AI vibe coding. So, to prevent this silent drift from happening, we are entering this incredible new era of AI vibe coding. This is where users just instruct language models in everyday natural language to build apps without traditional code. Looking at this resulting SD Navigator interface, we can literally map the psychological state vector of a company. Over on the left, it shows the current worldview profile. Those colors represent things like purple tribalism, red impulsivity, blue order, orange drive, and of course green empathy. And right below that, it maps real-time psychological sensors like fear, trust, and well-being.
Let's break down what we're actually seeing here. The state vector maps exactly where the company's culture is right now. The control actions simulate different management choices, like, say, unpaid vacation versus reducing staff. Then the objective weights do something absolutely revolutionary. They mathematically prove that fear is a heavy, measurable cost. Finally, the AI runs an adaptive protocol to forecast the predicted state over the coming months. It acts like a GPS, surfacing these complex cross-stage patterns that human managers totally miss.
Now, the ultimate goal of all this is maximizing what's called the J stability score. It's simply the sum of the weight times the impact. If a management action, saves some money but completely spikes fear, that negative impact drastically lowers your J score. By aiming for an optimal path where J is greater than 0.20, the model mathematically penalizes you for destroying team well-being. It basically forces change analytics to finally respect relational harmony. It proves with hard math that a toxic workplace is fundamentally inefficient.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought today. We know that treating relational harmony as friction completely breaks systemic cohesion, but if an algorithm can compute empathy, anticipate the compounding effects of a layoff, and recognize cohesion signals way better than a biased human manager, is it time we fundamentally reprogram our whole approach to leadership? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, Focus Learners. Keep questioning the obvious, and I'll catch you in the next one.